So like I said, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about money. And this is Salvo School. So that means everyone is to participate. And that means that everyone is to share. So what I've done is I put on the forum, called Henry Forum, some reasons why people are broke. And I asked people just to think about some Bible texts, some Spirit of Prophecy quotes, to support some of the arguments. And if anyone's got any other reasons why, we are broke all the time. So let us open with a word of prayer before we continue. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we first of all give you thanks for life, for sparing us another day. We thank you, Lord, for the Sabbath, that, Lord, we can put our cares and our stresses and work matters aside, and that, Lord, we can just spend that time with you. Please refresh us, bless us, and guide us, Father. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so okay, can everyone see that? Can everyone hear me okay, by the way?
Yes.
Good, okay. Yeah. So today's study then, so everyone should have a copy of this, why people are broke. And really, God's people shouldn't be broke, but we find ourselves, and I use the royal we find ourselves scraping and getting by each month because we're broke. So I wanted to start off with a couple of Bible texts. And what I would like to do, this is going to be a working document. And with everyone's participation, we will make this into a little article to send out to everyone. So Deuteronomy 8:18 states this: "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that gives thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day." So first of all, we don't make wealth by ourselves. We don't do anything by ourselves. And the promise here, or is it a promise, or is it a statement? Is it a statement of fact? That first of all, we should remember God. Never leave God out of the equation. That's the first thing. And secondly, it is God that gives us power to get wealth. Now, one of the things we probably can do, or ought to do, or should do, is to define what wealth is. Wealth can mean different things to different people, right? So let's just put that as a thought, what wealth is. So God gives us power, right? Or the abilities, the mind, the spirit, whatever we call it, the motivation, yeah, to get wealth. That may he establish his covenant, which is swear unto the fathers, as it is this day. So what does it mean to have wealth? Anyone?
I think as you pointed out, it can mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
But as a generic statement, I think it would be flexibility to provide needs and wants without lack, whatever that can be, whether it's money, whether it's assets, whether it's, anything.
So flexibility to provide for needs and wants without
strain.
Without strain, yeah, okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, good.
Yeah, I think I once saw something which it talked about somebody having like, let's say they're earning £10,000 or something like that. They're earning £10,000 a year, but they're only spending £1,000 a year in terms of outgoing. someone was earning £100,000, but their outgoings were £120,000. And it's like, which one has more wealth? Is the person who could fit more of their living within their earnings. So the more you can cover your outgoings, the more wealth you have. You then had more money, but didn't have more wealth.
Yeah. Okay. So more disposable income. Okay.
A greater proportion of disposable income.
So not about earning power, but retention power. Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
the way to do it. Yeah. I
It's
agree with
basically
that.
like if you lose your job, the other guy could, for that £10,000 is earning a year, he could live 10 years without working, whereas the other person couldn't live 1 year without working.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Any other thoughts? Some people say health is wealth. That's why no one said that one. Health is wealth, because without health, the power to actually work, then doesn't matter how much money you got, it's nothing, isn't it? Unless we have good health.
They're both physical and mental.
What about wisdom and knowledge as wealth?
Yeah, wisdom and knowledge. Yeah, if put to use. No point having knowledge or wisdom. You keep it to yourself. That's my thought. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, carry on. Natalie, carry on, if that was you.
I was just going to say, I think this verse talks about not worshipping other gods, the god of man and money. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think the context of it is putting God first, right? Which is says, remember.
It's not worshipping other idols or gods, which is money.
Yeah. Okay. So if we monetize that, if I can use that word, wealth is putting God first.
Yeah, because it talks in this verse about, getting houses and all that stuff and forgetting about God. So this is all about, God brought them out of the wilderness and fed them. We don't need to worship those things. And if we do, we won't be in the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. Good.
I think that's a good point. But it can be used to downplay, those that want to gain and want, these things. So the key point there is putting God first, because it's him that gives you all these things. So it's not wrong to have all these things, but it's important to remember that it's God that gives you the ability to get all those things.
Yeah, and I think what Natalie was putting in the context in verse 17, where it says, "And thou say in thine heart, my power and the might of mine hand have gotten me this far." So basically, it's we're claiming we've done it by ourselves without putting God first. Yeah, and I think that's a point that we'll come on to. Is it wrong to have money? Is it wrong to have wealth? However we've defined it. Some people will define wealth as lots of money.
Manjit, who was the person in the Bible? It's gone out my mind. Who was meant to show? Was it around the time of Isaiah? He was meant to show all his glory and give the glory to God. Was it Solomon? And he didn't. He said, "Look at all this what I've got." And Isaiah stayed silent just to see his heart.
Yeah,
he was supposed to say, "I got all this because of God."
Hezekiah. So the story was that he got sick. God cured him, and then the Babylonians came to wish him goodwill and see how he got better. And then he showed the Babylonians all his money and his wealth, without giving God the glory, without giving saying that God provided it. In fact, he was unwise to do that anyway, because it's almost like he was boasting. But yeah, Hezekiah, yeah.
And Manjit, we've got other examples in the Bible of people who God blessed with wealth, and that was Abraham and both Job. They were both very wealthy. And we can look at their example and how they lived their life through the wealth that he blessed them with.
Yeah. So, and even Solomon. Yeah. So it's not wrong to have money. It's not wrong to be wealthy. I think if we're going to say something is wrong, it's wrong to make that the priority. In other words, when we look at Abraham, Job, and even Solomon to a certain extent, it wasn't their desire or it wasn't their aim to be wealthy. They became wealthy because God blessed them, if that makes sense. In other words, they worked hard, they did what was right, they weren't lazy, they did their bit, and God did what they weren't able to do.
What about that verse that says it's harder for a camel to get through a needle pin than for a rich man?
So I have a needle.
How you explain that one?
So while we look at that, maybe someone give me the actual verse for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, that actually is a true account. There was a little gate called the
Matthew 19 verse 24.
Yeah, sorry, what's that?
Matthew 19 verse 24.
Matthew 19 verse 24. So so there was actually a gate called the Eye of the Needle, and I think the story goes that when merchants came in to pay their taxes, the camels couldn't actually get into the Eye of the Needle. I think that's as the story goes, and I think the issue here of the rich man, you can have rich men who are going to be in the kingdom of heaven, and you're going to be rich men who are going to be lost. The issue is not so much on the richness. I think the issue comes back into that Deuteronomy 8:17. You know, who they put in first. Are they putting God first, or are they putting their money first? There was that verse as well where there was a farmer, and he's got so much rich harvest that instead of kind of sharing it, giving it away, he tears down his barns and makes bigger barns, right, to store up all these goods and wealth, and then celebrates, and then he dies. So the issue isn't about being rich. I think the issue is where's the heart.
Manjit, what about was it a lawyer that said he came to Jesus and said, how can I have salvation and get to the kingdom of heaven? And he said, give all that you have, because Jesus knew he was very rich. Give all that you have to the poor, and there's your answer.
Yeah, so that was the, I can't remember if it was a lawyer or not, but that was the rich ruler. And he says, what do I lack? I've given this and that, whatever, what do I lack? And I think the issue on that was, if I remember rightly, is that he focused on works. He focused on, he's giving stuff and he's helping people. Or it's the other way around, he prays and stuff, but he's not doing the works that correspond to it. The point is, Jesus told him to do that because that was the one thing which was in his heart, covetousness. And Jesus was saying, give all your wealth away. But that was specific to him. That's not like to all of us, we give all our wealth away. That was to him. Give up all your wealth and come follow me, be my disciple. That was actually a direct invitation to being a disciple.
Yeah, I agree that it was particularly probably for him. So we have to decide in our heart, are we worshipping idolatry, the god of mammon? Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, I remember. Go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish because it sounded like you was off the back of what Natalie said, and then I'll come after.
Yeah, I just remember years back watching the Jesus movie. It was called The Greatest Story Ever Told. It was one of the really earlier versions of it, and I remember Jesus is traveling, and then he comes to Matthew, and he says, he's a tax collector. He says, "Have you got anything to declare?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, I've got plenty to declare." And he goes, "Well, what do you want to declare?" He goes, "My Father in heaven." And then he says, "Come follow me." It's always stuck in my mind, that one. And then how Matthew just gave up everything. He gave up, his job, well-paid job, mind you, to become, one of Jesus' disciples. After throwing one big party, he gives it away and follows Jesus. So, in Matthew's mind, the kingdom of heaven was worth more to him than the treasures of the earth. And each person, I think, has a different part to play in God's kingdom. And what that role is, it's going to be unique and specific to every person. It may be you have to give up everything. I remember years back when I first became an Adventist, there was it was an Indian Christian guy, not Adventist, it was an Indian Christian guy. I think his name was Ram Goodhamal. And he was like a top banker in the UK, Europe. I mean, he was like a wealthy banker, and he packed his job in. To focus on ministry, and that's what God called him to do. I mean, he had a well-paid job. I mean, a very wealthy person. So God has a calling on each person, what their role is. For some people, God provides them wealth to fund ministry work, and that's what God has called them to do. So each one has a different role, each one has a different function. So having wealth in and of itself is not bad, but what you've got to be careful of is what that wealth can do to you. In other words, if you start making the wealth your money or your security, that's when you're going to fall into danger, into the danger zone, should I say. Okay, so we've got some examples there of where...
Manjit.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, going back to the point of, is it... I think how I've been in the past, I've had this view of that it's a virtue to be poor and not to have wealth, like, because the Bible speaks about wealth sometimes in a negative sense, and as you said, it's more about how it's how do you worship it? Is it your first priority? Do you prioritize that over God? Because I'll always go to Revelation 13, talking about the mark of the beast, and it says he makes rich and poor, free and bond. Like, so whether you're rich or poor, it doesn't make you any less liable to, or any less susceptible to the mark of the beast, or the and less susceptible to the mark of the beast, or the seed of God either. You get both, whether you're rich or poor. The seed of God is not only just to the poor, it's also to the rich. And you'd be surprised. Maybe some people, some of the poor people, they seem poor, but if they had the ability to get money, they'd get it just as much as the rich people. So there's lack of opportunity.
Yeah, in fact, you bring up the point of Revelation, and the issue is, money is involved, isn't it? Because, if you don't receive the mark of the beast, you can't buy and sell. In other words, if buying and selling is your sole God, then you're going to capitulate and say, yeah, fine, I'll take, I'm not, I'd rather have the mark of the beast than the seal of God, because my whole life revolves around the earthly treasures. Go ahead, carry on.
Just thinking of, like your friend who was called to ministry. Again, that can sometimes, be, for lack of a better term, dicey, because, like, how do you know when you have been called? And I'll give an example. Years back in the movement, there was this, people believed that they were called into ministry, and so left education, left really good paying jobs to go into ministry. And years later, we find them picking them up again. And some people will say that they resisted that call. So how do you know when you are called into ministry, or you're just doing it out of, this idea that once you are converted, as you give up your life and give it to God wholeheartedly. So it's, when do you know when you have been called or haven't been called? Because you can make mistakes in your life believing that you've been called to ministry, and end up, throwing away opportunities to progress in life, such as go through education to get a good job, or leaving a really good job.
Yeah, I can't answer that for the individual. That's something everyone has to work up themselves. However, you do raise a point that sometimes people make decisions based on bad advice, and that might not be the God's voice or the calling of God's voice, but they think, like for example, like I've met people who didn't want to go to university because they thought the end of the world was coming. So I say to people, okay, the end of the world is coming. Does it matter if you're at university or in a job? I mean, okay, if you don't go to university, you're still gonna have to work, aren't you? You can't just sponge off people and lounge around and not do anything, unless you specifically feel you've been called to do be a Bible worker or something like that. So this idea of not going to university or having an education, well, if you don't have an education, I mean, okay, let me put it this way: if you don't go to university of education, you're still going to have to work. You're still going to have to consume your 8 hours a day working. So it becomes a choice: do you spend 8 hours a day at work, working for someone, or do you spend 8 hours a day studying, at a college or a university? So, and I always say to people, once you've got your education, once you've got your degree, you've always got something then to fall back on. Even if you do decide to do some kind of mission work, it's difficult. I'm not one to go against people's consciences, but I will at least kind of share the options, or not to make a decision based on bad ideas. I mean, it's like coming to the country. Yeah, we've got the admonition and the counsel that we should move out into the country. But everyone always forgets, where Ellen White advises when we should move into the country. I can't remember the exact wording she says, but in effect, that we should move into the country wisely. In other words, we've got to provide for our families, or in other words, adults need to provide for the families, if we can put it that way, rather than just so we've got to provide for the families. We've got to have an income coming in. So you can't just move to the country without a job, hoping that God's gonna provide something, miraculously. I'm not saying he can't and he wouldn't, but I'm always a firm believer that God expects us to do all the things that we can do, and he'll do what we cannot do. There's so many things that we cannot do that he can provide, but we've got a part to play. So I always say to people, okay, if you want to move to the country, well, first off, how are you going to afford it? Can you provide for your family? What work are you going to do? And if you haven't got work, then don't move. It's as simple as that. Or, if you're a single person, right? And so I'm not labeling anyone, but I remember there was one person. They moved to Wales, and they lived in a very rural place, and they only had like one bus a week, something like that, and they couldn't drive a car. And for most of the time they're stuck, stuck in the house or unless someone picks them up and drops them off, or that one day when the bus comes, and that's not sensible. So you got to work with what you've got, and that person that you would have been better off, maybe going into a town, a small rural town, with at least some infrastructure, with the shops nearby where you can walk to the shops, where there's better bus connections, for example. So we should educate ourselves, or not only educate ourselves, we should educate ourselves wisely making our decisions. So anyone wants to move to the country, okay, first question is, what job are you going to do? Have you got a means, a way to earn means? Now, if you're in a position where, okay, you've got income coming in and you don't actually need to work, then that's a good position to, you know, a nice position to be in. But not everyone's going to be in that position. So we need to be sensible. And you know, I've said to people, you want to go to university, go to university. It's fine. You know, because if you don't go to university, you're only going to have to work. So what's the difference? 8 hours studying, 8 hours working. I mean, some people have the idea based on Martin Luther. What Martin Luther said, that, you know, the universities are the gateways to hell. But you know, I've worked enough years, all right, to know that there's no difference between what goes on at a university and what goes on in the workplace. When all the things that happen at university, they do at the workplace. There's no difference. Although we just seem to think in the workplace is a little bit more civilized. And the context of what Martin Luther was talking about, he was talking more about theological colleges, in terms of, you know, if you go and study theology, you know, some of these places were the gateways to hell. It's not if you're going to do a sociology degree or a business degree or a law degree, you know, those kind of things.
I think, Manjit, some of us conservative in this movement used to say exactly the same as Luther.
Yeah, I've heard it. You know, I've heard people say that, and I've agreed with it. I went to university myself. I don't think I've ever, you know, discouraged people from going to university. I don't know. I've always said to people, you know, look at all your options, decide what you want to do, and then do it.
Some people in Court
So,
Henry have discouraged it.
People
Yeah.
everywhere have discouraged it. You know, I mean, you know, yeah. So I want to bring it. Oh, so go on.
Manjit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just on that thing on university, I remember there was a time, I'll be honest, there was a time I would not look favorably on university. The time I wanted to quit my university, if the opportunity came to do something else, I would have done it. And so there's a period early in my life and movement, I'd be discouraging people from going to university. And then I went to Kenya in 2016, and I still had that kind of mindset of, oh, you know, you shouldn't go to university, get an apprenticeship or something like that. But when I went to Kenya, I realized that, you know, you're telling people to quit uni so that they can just work and study. But I realized that if people in Kenya, and I don't know if anyone's been to a third world country, the situation is so dire there that if you don't have a form of education, if you have education, you can do a 9-to-5 job and be comfortable. You can be comfortable. You just, you know, go to your work in the morning, come back at night. You've got a nice place to live, and you've got enough money to share among others as well. Because what happens in what you don't see, in the UK so much that you see in third world countries is there's so many people who are lacking. Like, people need support. There's so many people who need support. And so if I told them not to go to university, they'd have to do a very difficult job like farming, and they'd have to be out of the house at 4 o'clock in the morning, not come back until 8 p.m. at night. And then they'd be earning a pittance that they'd probably need extra support. So it's like you're telling them not to go to uni, but then the result of that is they don't have the time to study because they're at the farm, and then, you know, from early crack of dawn, they're trying to sell their few vegetables for a few shillings. And then on top of that, it's not enough to cover everything that they need, you know, and so that they're going to need some support from brethren anyway. So it's like, should you tell them to go to uni, have more time, and be able to be a provider for others, or don't go to uni, don't have time to study, and be somebody who's in need? And if someone has the opportunity, has the aptitude to be able to go to university, I think from that day, I really stopped discouraging it and encouraging it, because I realized that it was just it's more just a form without the, you know, it's one of those things. It's the law without the spirit, where you're doing it because you want people to study more. You don't have to lose focus. But if they didn't go to university, they definitely lose focus, because they'll be so anxious about what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to do this. Whereas when you're anxious about how much you sell that day, will a rat come and eat all this stuff? Will they rot? Whereas if you're doing it at night, if you get a degree and you get a good job, you know you're gonna get salary at the end of the day. You know, if there's any dismissal, there's a procedure. You just need to turn up and do your task assigned for the day, and it's a lot more comfortable, a lot less anxious. Your mind can be more easily stayed upon God in that situation, and that taught me that discouraging people from studying was a bad idea.
Yeah. The same what Natalie's saying. You know, sometimes we give advice, wrong advice, and we ruin people's lives. It's a responsibility. I like giving advice to people because it's responsibility, because you know you could give wrong advice, and I know in the past, you know, I've given wrong advice, and you know sometimes, you know, when I'll talk with Emma or Elder Pemenda, and you know, say this is the advice I gave, and so well, that was really rubbish advice you were giving, and I thought, oh, Ellen, you were bad. You know, I gave bad advice, but you give advice, and it's all about perspective, isn't it? You know, if people ask me my opinion, I'll give it based on my perspective and based upon, you know, my you know, the experience I've had in years, and you know, maybe the advice I give may be good for a time, but may not be good for now, or so it's difficult. And so when taking advice from people, it's always good to get, you know, advice from more than one person, and then you pray and ask which advice actually makes more sense, or which advice is more practical, or which advice is more spiritually aligned to, you know, to what we need to do. So, you know, I haven't got a problem taking advice from people, and then I choose which one, you know, I'm gonna run with, what I'm gonna go with. I just want to just bring this point about wealth is also really happiness. You know, money doesn't, and I use the word, doesn't necessarily bring happiness, um, but happiness isn't all about money. You know, you know, I think true wealth, you know, is about contentment, contentment with what you've got. And I remember, in fact, we was talking at breakfast time about how sometimes we have a bad uh, perspective, or basically how prejudiced we are of people and what jobs they have. We look low. You know, we have what we call the blue collar and the white collar, and the blue collar is like the lower low lives, and the white collar are the more kind of, you know, the sensible ones with the sensible jobs. And yet, you know, we look down on the people who are the blue collars. And yet, you know, if their job wasn't done, yeah, the life of the white collars would be miserable. And I think sometimes we lose perspective of, you know, on the true worth of a job. You know, if there's a job need doing, there's someone that needs to do that job. You know, we shouldn't look down on them. We shouldn't, we shouldn't look down on builders, because if we didn't have builders, we wouldn't have the houses, you know, to live in. You know, or you know, I was I even mentioned, I remember I saw this program like the worst jobs in the world, and I was saying to Demon, Perinda and Leon this morning, I said, you know, one of the worst jobs in the world was pulling out dead bodies from the river Ganges, because so many people throw, you know, the dead bodies into there because they can't afford the burials, or many people commit suicide, and because it's a sacred river, the government has to hire people to actually swim into the river and dig out all the dead bodies, because there's so many dead bodies. Otherwise it rots and stinks the whole area. And it was like the worst job ever. But you know, if that wasn't done, what's going to happen to all those dead bodies? This can decay and decompose in the water and contaminate it. So, you know, everyone has a job to do. And I remember years back, I had a friend, and I just asked him. I said, "What do you do? You know, what do you do for a living?" And he said, "I'm a road sweeper." Right now, what he said was, and this was really, really important. What he said is, I am a road sweeper. Yeah. And so many times I've heard people say, oh, I am just a secretary. I don't even know if anyone else ever heard that. Or I am just, you know, a shelf stocker at Asda or something like that. And they put in that word just to basically downplay or minimize their job, as if like, oh, I'm ashamed and stuff like that. But I remember him saying, I'm a road sweeper. And he said it with such kind of happiness and dignity. And I said to him, I kind of laughed a little bit. I said, okay, yeah, no. So seriously, what do you do for a living, right? Because the way he said it, I thought he was joking. And he said, no, I am a road sweeper, and I love it. It's the best job in the world, you know. And then he literally spent about 5 minutes describing what he does and why it's the best job. He says, I'm in my little sweep vehicle, and I get to drive all around the city. So it's like a free kind of tourist event. So I know all the city, you know, and then I can listen to my spirit of prophecy in the Bible while I'm in my little kind of vehicle, and I'm getting paid to listen to the Bible and spirit of prophecy. I was just like, I thought, wow, it's the first time. It's very rare do I meet people who are actually really proud of the job that they do, however stately or lowly, you know, we may view it. And you know, I had great respect for him. I thought, wow, you know, for a road sweeper, he was one of the happiest mans I've ever, you know, met. He was so happy. He was so cheerful. Yeah. And I thought, gosh, you begin to wonder, like, you know, are any of us in the right jobs? So, you know, wealth, I'm going to put that it's connected to happiness. Anyone else got any thoughts then before we move on?
And how about genuine relationships?
This is from the son who really praised their best mother. Excellent. Wealth is actually, you know what? I think, no, we'll do that separate. Is happy relationships.
Manjit,
Yeah, go ahead.
there's a definition I read, which I think encompasses a lot of what we've said, is that wealth is the abundance of something. And abundance implies, you know, like excess or without strain. It encompasses all these things. So whether it's happiness or good relationships or money or whatever it is, it's the abundance of that thing.
I like that. That's really good. I like that. I'll underline that. Yeah, good. And I think that's quite a good observation you've made there. Let me just quickly. Sometimes the chat's a bit distracting because I have to go back and read the chats just to make sure I'm not missing anything.
I wanted to say, Manjit, you know, when you said about it's gone out my mind now, but you just talked about something and I thought about Proverbs 28:22 that you've put on there, and I was thinking it's not so much about the money being bad, it's haste of the money. So it's those who chase money. It's okay, like if you're in a relationship and you don't have money to pay your bills, you're going to be very happy. So you can have a wealth of a happy relationship, but it's not really going to be happy if you can't pay your bills. You're going to be, you know, at each other about that. So it's about those who haste for money, who are just the whole focus ideology on money.
And it's like when we was talking about Abraham and Job, you know, I think they were great businessmen for sure, but I don't think the whole motivation in life was to make money. In other words, they did what they did and they became wealthy from that, as opposed to making wealthiness their goal. And we'll talk about this actually when we come to point 1 about setting goals. Should we set being wealthy as one of our goals? But let's look at Proverbs. If we finish with the first verse, Deuteronomy, let's look at Proverbs 10:22. If there's no other points on that.
Oh, Manjit.
Yeah, go ahead. And before we went, Tom, go ahead.
You got a question. I think it's the title, Why Are People Broke?
Yeah.
You're gonna deal with it as well later on.
Yeah, that's where it comes to point 1. We're gonna go through it.
Okay.
This is just the intro, but we're actually spending all our time intro, which is fine. This is good. So in the chat box, Tom made this point about how we've made this kind of hierarchy of jobs, and each of us, you know, I think each of us, you know, find ourselves guilty in our hierarchy. So if we happen to find ourselves at the higher end, we can, even not realizing it, look down on those who are at the lower end. And those who are on the lower end, are feeling diminished, they're feeling low esteem, they're feeling like failures because they're on that rung of what we've classed as the rung of that ladder. And I think we need to change our mindsets. We need to be like that brother. His name was John. I won't reveal his last name, but his name was John. And I remember his wife Marion because I went to their wedding. But he was just so happy. He was so happy being a road sweeper, And there I was training as an accountant, and I wasn't particularly happy. I was quite miserable. It was like a hard job. So, happiness isn't about the higher, and we always want to go up higher. Oh, if only I was a manager, if only I was a director, if only I was like an executive, if only I could run my own business. And for those of you out there who do run their own business, you know how hard it is, and the struggles that you face running your own business. And it always looks sweet on the other side, and it isn't, to be honest. And sometimes we are victims of our own culture or upbringing. I remember years ago we was talking, me and Elder Paminda, about maybe starting like a little potato business, having like one of these little potato stands, charge £2, but we'll make it vegetarian, mind you. Would you want potato and beans or potato and vegan cheese, or something along those lines? And my mum, right, she just went ballistic at us. Called us all kinds of words. You went to university, you spent all that time getting education, and you want to go on the street selling potatoes. Then that kind of killed the conversation. And even in my mother's mind, right, why on earth did we invest all that time in you to go to university to go and sell potatoes? She just couldn't equate it. She couldn't equate the idea that actually selling potatoes. And thinking about it, selling potatoes in the freezing cold at winter is probably not that appealing either. But she couldn't think that the idea of selling potatoes was, one, a good career, and two, a waste of time and talent. And I think sometimes we're caught into that, and I think that's quite prevalent more in kind of maybe African, Caribbean, and definitely Indian culture, where there is a hierarchy of jobs. We also look down on where we are and want to run up. Yeah, we do. We're just not satisfied or content where we. And maybe sometimes, is there anything wrong not being satisfied where we are? Is it wrong to strive for higher, better things? And that's something that we can discuss. So if I'm in a low paying job, I think the first issue is being content with that. But is there anything wrong to strive for the capability, potential of having a better job? That's something we can talk about. So Proverbs 10:22, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. And I like this verse because it's this idea that being rich, being wealthy, okay, is a blessing of the Lord. But I want to put a proviso of that, because some people say, well, hold on, if I'm poor, does that mean God's not blessing me? And I don't think that's the context of really what it's saying. But nonetheless, it's the blessing of the Lord that make it rich. And we've talked about actually the definitions of wealth. So for this sake, if we make richness and wealth the same definition, then all of those things isn't necessarily all about money. It's God's blessing. And he addeth no sorrow with it. And the point is, you can have people who we could deem to be very rich and wealthy, but they're miserable. They have sorrow. I remember, in fact, in a number of companies I've worked for, the high flyers, the high executives, the amount that have divorced was quite high. And they're coming to work kind of with that sad look in their face, the sorrow, or they become workaholics because they've got nothing to go to back home. And that's not happiness either. And this idea here about God blessing you and making you rich, with happiness, no sorrow attached to it. And I think that's important, really. I'd rather, be poor and happy than be monetarily wealthy and just miserable. Something to think about. Oh, actually, do I really want that? I don't know. It's difficult. I'm a product of my own upbringing, I think, in many situations. Proverbs 28:22. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. And that's important too, about what's our motivation. If we're striving to be, rich in this context, monetarily rich, then what it does, it produces this evil eye. In other words, we have that potential of becoming corrupt in the richness itself, and being corrupt in how we make the richness. In other words, we fall into ways where we end up justifying, making money quickly, rather than making it honestly, if I can put it that way. And I remember I saw a film once. It was a Christian film, and how there's two friends, and one's really struggling, but he's got this idea. So he works all hours. He's studying. He works all hours. In a restaurant. Cleaning the dishes, serving dishes, and everything. And then his friend basically becomes a drug dealer, and he's driving in his BMW, and he gives his friend lifts, and if you say, look, come work for me, look, I've got a job for you. He says, no, I can't do it. I follow God, and then this guy, he just works hard. He saves his money, right? He saves his money, and then he starts investing it, and he prays to the Lord. He says, where should I invest my money? And then he invests his money, pulls it out, invests again, pulls it out, and the broker, the banker says, he says, you have this habit of always getting perfect timing. You put the money in at the right time, you draw at the right time, you put it back in the right time, and then eventually the guy, he buys the restaurant, and he buys a chain of restaurants, and he becomes wealthy through God's blessing. So it's kind of like a nice little story. And then the drug dealer ends up going to church, and anyway, that's another story. But this issue about hastily trying to make money, that's where the danger is, because you can end up. And that's why, by the way, so many people fall for scams. They fall for scams because there's a promise of making money quickly, easily, and then they get scammed. And I remember, so many brethren in Africa, they get scammed because they live in this hope of something better, out of poverty, and then when they see an opportunity, it ends up 99% of the time being a scam. And what these scammers do, they target specifically Africans with this promise of, you put in $100, and then you'll earn this, but you can't take it out straight away. But you earn this. Go and tell your friends you earn commissions, and then what they do, they give you a little bit of money back when you withdraw, so it all looks good, looks kosher. And then about 5-6 months in, you start, oh, you know what, I'm going to put more money in. You start borrowing money to put it into it, and then it's a scam. And then you lose all your money, and then what do? You end up blaming God. Why did God put me in this mess? And God gets the blame.
I was thinking, Manjit, the hasteth bit.
Yeah.
It's alluding to that all those who hasteth is the word to look at here. All those that hasteth will fall and become poverty stricken. Because the hasteth is they're one-eyed, they're single-eyed on quick money themselves, not on others. I think all those who hasteth to be rich will become will have a lack of, wherever way you want to put it. I would put it spiritually. They will have lack of spirituality. Some people will say lack of money at the end. I would say lack of spirituality. So it's it's hasteth. It's. I think you have to look at it in a parable sense. It's more about spirituality.
Yeah,
It's
cause and effect. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
and I was gonna say, it's just interesting. This verse has a bit of a, it's an oxymoron or a contrast. It's like you're hating to be rich, but in the end, it's poverty. And maybe yeah, it was a good thing that we kind of defined all the different ways of what wealth means at the beginning. So you might get your monetary wealth, but overall you'd be poor of relationships, you'd be poor of happiness, you'd be poor of wealth probably because maybe you're spending all you're living at the edge of your income, whatever it may be. But it is interesting that it provides this contrast that you can be rich but still be in poverty. And you're poor in the things that we talked about earlier because and I kind of experienced this myself, when you try to and sometimes you do it at the beginning out of a good motivation, like, okay, I want to make some money so I can move to the country or whatever. But you end up getting so anxious about it, you end up getting very, like, it's almost like this hunger that grows, like this discontentment that grows, that you look so far in the future, you look for what you want to do with your money, that you don't enjoy where you are right now. You don't, you have a lot of anxiety, you don't sleep well, you're getting very stressed, all this it impacts your relationships, you're stressed and grouchy, you don't interact with others well. And it really impacts your health. I think stress is one of the biggest factors for things like cancer. A lot of people get cancer. One of the main, one of the, let me say, one of the correlations. Let me say, not the, it might not be a cause, but a correlation that they're super stressed before, and it's like, look, you earn your money now, and you're dying alone, kind of thing. And it's easy to get there. It's easy to get there. So I'm not even coming here with my high horse, because it's very easy to get there because you as I said, sometimes you can start off with a good motivation, but it's that always keeping in perspective why you're doing it, and keeping God in perspective that gives you that peace that, look, even if I lose this money, even if I lose this, I'm not going to do anything wrong because I was doing it anyway for the glory of God. Yeah.
I was thinking, Manjit, I just think this verse basically means those who hasteth to be worldly rich will be destitute of God's Spirit at the end of the world.
Yeah. You've also got Proverbs. Here. Proverbs 28:20, right? Where a faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. And it's kind of connected there. So obviously, if you're trying to make this money hastily, and when it says not innocent, you're not innocent because the methods. So I'm gonna put it here like the methods. So let me just throw this in the works then. Some people have been made very wealthy investing in Bitcoin. Is that wrong? Do you feel like you left out on the Bitcoin revolution? Or if I only had to put £100 into Bitcoin, I'd have been like a millionaire today. But somebody just.
I think that just falls into your risk to reward, in terms of, if you're on the brink of, if you have lack of money and you are risking all that money, that's not wise. I think that would fall into one of these points that you've made of why people are poor. It's making investments unwisely, beyond your means. But if you're risking a little to gain a lot, might be wise for you to do so. So it's all dependent on everyone's circumstances.
Yeah.
I think if you're sorry, Manjit, go on.
No, go ahead.
I think those who hasteth to be rich, it's saying in that verse that it could be at the detriment of other people. if you're going to be rich like Abraham and stuff like that, it's the blessings of the Lord, and his eyes, Abraham's eyes, not focused on hasting to be rich. But if you're in this passage, is talking about those who haste to be rich, and those who are high up in, not all, but majority, who are extremely rich, they do it at the detriment of the innocent.
Yeah,
But we can't guarantee that, though.
I said not all, but the majority get rich quick. It normally harms other nations, other people.
Oh, we've got examples of that. We can only look at the Great Depression. What happened to people there? They were, when I was studying the Great Depression and how that came about. Obviously, it was to do with the stock market. They looked at these particular men and how they were living, and so they wanted a part of that. And so everybody was, like Manjit was saying, borrowing money to have stocks in the market, and they didn't care, about anything else. They just borrowed the money because they wanted to become wealthy quickly. And look and to me, that's a good example of what happened, and that's why that Great Depression happened, I think. And God, you could say that God was showing us an example through that.
Okay. Any other thoughts? We always think, oh yeah, if I put the £100 in Bitcoin or dodgy coin is dog coin, and all these other ones that we have this kind of fear of missing out. All right, so
Manjit, a point I wanted to make is that I can't remember on what we were discussing, but just that remembering that money is a means to the end and not the end itself.
yes,
and so whether it's happiness being the end, it's remembering that no matter how much wealth you get, it doesn't equate to happiness, but it can, get you to that end. So however you choose to interpret that, it's that money is the means to an end, not the end itself. Yeah.
What about money is the root of all evil? I'm being very contentious, aren't I? More thinking. I have to critique these things.
Yeah, but it's not love of money. It's the love of money that's
the love of
money.
money. It's the root.
The love of money.
Yeah, I was just going to say
Good
that.
point.
So we don't love it when we're trying to get it then.
I think
the love of money above God, the other verse that we started with, because that's implying that, there's something that you love more than God. The words aren't there, the love of money above God, but I'm just placing them there.
Yeah. I think it's connected to those proverbs, because the love of money, is going to drive you to work in unethical ways.
Yeah, Proverbs 28:22.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom. Was that you?
Yeah, it was me. I was just going to say that just because you make money doesn't mean you love it, because that means everyone who has a job has that. It's evil for them to have a job to make money. So that means that we should all be unemployed by that. So I think I think just, when you think about it that way, you think actually everyone goes to work is good. We're not saying anyone's wrong for going to work and paying the bills and doing all that. That doesn't mean you love money. And do we have like a specific amount? Do we say, okay, if you earn minimum wage, that means that you don't have money. If you earn any more than minimum wage, it means 5p over minimum wage. Does that mean you love money? So it's difficult to really put a figure or say, oh, if you earn less or if you earn more, that it's a lot of money. That you can have money when earning less, they just, because you can still misuse it, you can still misspend it. And it could just be a lack of opportunity. So I personally don't think there's a specific cap on saying that either A, if you work or if you get money, or if you want to earn a bit more money. It depends. It's more about the why do you want to earn that more money? Do you want to earn more money so you can, support the cause? You can live in the country, obey what God wants you to do. Not be dependent on anybody, to be independent, so that the funds can go somewhere else. So that all these things, or is it that you want to earn the money so you can not take care of those things? I think that's where the difference lies, rather than either earning money or the amount of money you earn.
And I think this all comes back to this contentment. You know, what I'm going to do. I know time is against us, but I'm just going to raise. I get, when it comes to money, I always get into trouble, or I always get judged, or I always get kind of critiqued, and I always have to kind of analyze myself. What is it about me? You know, am I a Scrooge? Am I just a miser? Am I just a miserable little person? Whatever. But you know, when it comes specifically to finances or money, for me, ever since I can remember, you know, there's two things where, when it comes to money, or when I spend, certainly when I spend money, if I do spend money, I'm always looking for two things. I'm always looking, one, for, I'll put A so I'm not confused, a return on investment. So when I spend my money, am I going to get return on investment? And this gets me into trouble many times, right? And then the second point is, when I spend money, right, I want value for money. Now, how do we define return on investment? So return on investment, well, okay, let me throw it out. How do we define return on investment? So you spend some money, okay. How do we define return on investment?
I think return on investment is just that, you know, how much you're putting in and what you'll get out of what you've put in. Are you going to get out more than what you put in? If you're just going to break even, that's not really a return on that investment, because you're basically getting back what you put in. So it's getting more than what you put into whatever it is you're putting money into.
Okay.
I suppose it depends on what it is, because I mean, the investment could be an ISA. You could have stocks and bonds. Sometimes you'll have money back off that, which is a bit of a gamble, the ones with the bonds. But the ISA, which most people tend to have, you do have it, and you just put money in there over a period of time, and then you get whatever percentage back on that.
It'd also be, you could invest £10,000 into a ministry in the movement and only save three souls. I would see that as an investment, a return on investment. It doesn't have to be we get 20,000 souls saved because we put 10,000 in. We put £10,000 in, and you find out when we're in heaven that saved 3 souls' lives. I think that's return investment.
You see, Natalie brings up the point, non-monetary return on investment. Okay, and that's important. And by the way, I shared that really wonderful ISA opportunity with you. You know, put £100 in, you get instant, 75 back. But you know, no one believed me on that one. But anyway, that's by and by. We leave that one. But non-monetary return on investment. So, for example, okay, coming back to this point, spending money. So, if I'm going to spend money, if I'm out and about, okay, and this happens all the time, when I'm out and about and I want to spend some money on food, okay, so if I buy something, if I eat this food, what's the return on investment going to be for me? Is it going to be healthy on my body, healthy on my pocket, or is it going to be, you know, just taste nice? So I return a non-monetary return investment could also be satisfaction. Yeah. Come on, you know, when you eat vegan ice cream, tell me that's not nice. You know, okay, it's not good for my body, but it sure does taste nice. So you get a return investment from some people like apple pie and apple crumble. You know, so you know you return investments on the satisfaction. Okay, or if you go out and this one's a tough one for me, that's just because I've got children. I remember we went out to Southend-on-Sea once to go and see a close family friend. I lived in that area, so I thought, let's go Southend-on-Sea, and then they have like bumper car rides, yeah, or some funfair rides. And it was like £8 a go, and Asha wanted to go. I thought, no way, I'm not gonna spend £8 for like a little 2-minute bumper ride. is this no return investment? And I still don't think there's a return on investment on that. But obviously from Ash's perspective, you know, it would have been satisfaction. Now you could have argued, and so, you know, fortunately in that case, Emma kind of agreed with me. £8 was a bit steep, but you know, in both our minds, like, okay, for £8, you know, isn't it priceless to see your son so happy for those 2 minutes and have a happy memory where, you know, he came to Southend and he was on the bumper cars with his daddy and whatever, for like, even if it be 2 minutes, you know, can you put a price on that? You know, and so often I probably can put a price on that and I don't want to pay it, but there is non-monetary return investment, the satisfaction, enjoyment, yeah, memories, and sometimes these are, and Natalie put soul winning, and sometimes these are you can't even monetize those. Okay. And value.
I think that satisfaction one is a really good point, because, you know, like my brother, for example, he works a really tough job, and he would go on holiday every year somewhere in the world. And, you know, like someone would point out, you know, you're trying to save, but you're going on holiday. And he pointed out that, you know, I work all these long hours and I get that I'm trying to save, but what's it all worth if throughout the year I'm just unhappy? And this time that I get to go away and spend with my family and relax is bringing back a different type of return on investment. So it's bringing back satisfaction, bringing back ease of the body, mind, relaxation. So it's all these non-monetary things, but we've been framed in a world where return on investment is just the monetary return that you get. But it could just be spending time with your family, taking time away from work. And sure, it means expending money and not seeing it back, but you're gaining other things that aren't money.
Yeah. My father was very much into that. My father was very much into the non-monetary return investments. You know, he would invest in his children, he invest in his family, you know, he would do things. And, you know, to him, he wouldn't put a price ticket on, you know, on the happiness. You know, if most of the time, you know, if me or Paminda or my sister wanted something, you know, most of the time he'll get it for us. You know, occasionally may hesitate. Once in a while he'll say definitely no. You know, but most of the time he would do that. The one thing he was definitely no on was we when we were young, we wanted a dog, and it was definitely no way are you guys getting the dog. And now, do I want to get a dog? No, I don't know if I want to get a dog now. It's too much hard work. And the second point really is value for money. I have to see when I'm spending money, value for money, and okay, it's connected to the return on investment, but you know, is it value for money? Is it you know, at a good price? Is it discounted? Yeah. Is it? Am I getting a bargain? And that always gets me into trouble too. And for those of you who really know me, you know that, you know, these two things really kind of apply in it, and it distorts maybe the wrong thing. It governs my decision-making process is probably a better way. Let me just put here as well, taste, because that vegan ice cream really does taste good.
I was thinking, Manjit, you know, that another way to look at it in our day now is going on holiday, going for a day for the beach like you did for your anniversary. These are very important investments for your mental health. So you get a return there. It's important to have, what do you call it, recreation? I don't know. Yeah, it's important. There's no money back from that except an investment in your mental health and happiness of your family.
Did we tell you we went to the beach? Did Emma tell you? Did she stick pictures up or
She put
something?
it on forum.
Look at that.
What beach did you go to?
Swansea.
Oh, it's really good for you. I went to Clonstefan yesterday, and I tell you, my brain was unblocked.
Good for you. Good for you. My car needs unblocking anyway. Well, that's another story. But taste, recreation, mental health. Yeah, it's true. These things, these things, and like you know, Chris was saying. My father was the same. You know, not every year, but every couple of years, like my father would save up his holidays, and we'd go on a big whop of a holiday. And I remember my dad saved up, we went to Mauritius for like 6 weeks, went to India for 6 weeks, and my dad was really
Have you been to India?
Yeah, I've been to India twice.
Has Elder Paminda been to India?
Once.
With your
So
dad?
yeah. So we went on a really big family holiday, 6-week family holiday, and that was in 1977, I think. Gosh, I can still remember. So I was Zadok's age when we first went to India, and I still can remember it. Still remember, vivid parts of it. And I was his age. So you begin to think like Zadok, what does he remember? What's he going to remember? And what am I instilling in him for happy memories? But yeah, I was Zadok's age, 7 when we went to India. And then I went to India on a mission trip in 2008. Yeah, towards the end of 2008, I went to India. So I've only been to India twice, and then Paminda went to India, on the family holiday. When we went.
Manjit, was there SDAs in India?
Yeah,
mission trip.
Oh, there's more SDAs in India, yeah, than there are probably Christians in this country. I mean,
But not on the movement, as we know so far.
No. Actually, that's an exaggeration. There's more Indian Christians in India than there are Christians here in this country. But there are a large number of Adventists in India. But on the movement wise, I'm not specifically aware of, any. It's hard to tell, but I've not had any contact with anyone specifically. I'd like to go again. I got friends over there who I could work with, who I could do something with, to kind of start something. But we'll see. Well, right now at the moment, it's probably not a good idea to travel anywhere, least of all India. And that's the lesson, really. That if we'd have done the work earlier, if we'd have worked harder before COVID-19, then we may have reached a few more people. But anyway, and then second point is value for money. Is it value for money? And me and Emma always get into discussion sometimes, because I'm of a way of thinking that, and Curtis will probably know that if I see half price vegan sausage rolls, to me that's value for money. I'll buy a bunch of them because it's value for money. And then Emma will say, well, why do you get so many for? Is it value for money if you don't enjoy them? Is it value for money if they don't actually taste nice? And then I think, well, it certainly fills the belly, but actually it does taste nice. I do actually like them. But and sometimes Brother Leon's listening in, he'll critique me because I buy things in bulk. And not to upset Brother Debray, sometimes they may be a little bit out of date. Why they say cheap? Because they're value for money. But things are only value for money, yeah, and good return investment if actually they taste good. That's one issue, and I have to concede to that. And 2, you actually get it all finished, and you actually enjoy the process. Because sometimes what can happen is you buy so much of it that then you're forced to finish it, forced to eat it, and then that's no longer becomes part of the enjoyment. So for me, these are the 2 things that kind of govern me when it comes to spending money, and I still uphold to a good percentage that if everyone followed these 2 principles, yeah, they would be better off, and be less broke, which is what the whole kind of story of today is about. So I will still kind of hold my guns, and maybe there could be a little bit of adjustments to how we define those things. But when you spend money, think about return on investment, and 2, is it value for money? And there are some people, there's some people that I stand back and I'm amazed how they always find the bargains. Nat is actually quite good for finding bargains. And I tell you who else.
Did you say me then?
Yeah, you're quite good at finding bargains. And I tell you who was really exceptional at finding bargains. Two other people spring to mind. Tara Marie is actually really good at finding bargains, and Carolee, who used to be with us, she would always find these bargains and things for free. It was actually quite. I think she did it as a full-time job, just finding everything, good bargains for free. But she'd always come up with something good to do. Now I'm gonna just jump right? Because I know we won't get to it otherwise. And then maybe we'll have to.
Sorry, Manjit. We've
Yeah.
got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah. That's why I'm jumping, Daisy. You know. Right. Point 11. All right. I'm going to jump to point 11. Then maybe we can. When I'm next on the roster, we can finish this off. I'm going to jump here, number 11, because we don't do this, and we don't believe in it. About investing in ourselves. And again, what am I looking for? I'm looking for return on investment. Yeah. I'm looking for value for money. This thing about, and Tom raised a point earlier that sometimes we want to run up the ladder. We're not happy with where we're at, and we want to run up the ladder. Now, I think what I'd like to really stress is, first of all, at one level, right, be content where we're at. Be content, be happy and satisfied in whatever job you're in, all right? But that's not to say that, you know, you can't aim or be desirous for, you know, something, I use this carefully, something better, yeah, or something that has more earning capacity or better kind of wealth prospects. So who wants to invest in my happiness to invest would be a great satisfaction in your eyes when you see me driving a Mercedes. Yeah. Well, I definitely would feel happy if I was driving a Mercedes, Tom. And I'm sure if you were the passenger, you'd feel quite happy driving in my Mercedes. But quite frankly, I don't really have a desire driving the Mercedes. And that's a point, which was another point, which we won't have time to go today because time is pressing, is to impress others, right? We waste money, spend money to try and impress others. And I'm not really bothered or interested, you know, about trying to impress others. But investing in yourselves, and I think this is important, that everyone should invest in themselves. Everyone should, you know, always develop their skills. Everyone should always look to perfect their skills, learn new skills, broaden horizons. One thing about Debbie's always posting me stuff about this thing and that thing. I think, wow, you know, she's reading a lot. She's looking at the news a lot. She's investing in herself to be educated. And I think that's important, because the more educated you are, the better decisions you can make, you know, in that knowledge that you're gaining. So I want to encourage everyone to, you know, invest in yourselves, you know, keep developing your skills, keep developing new skills, because you never know, you know, when you're going to need those things. And that's one of the reasons why people are broke, because they don't invest in themselves. They stay in the same position they're in the same rut. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing. Bearing in mind that when you go up the ladder and things, there is sometimes a price to pay. And I remember seeing a video on that where, you know, two friends, they meet after a couple of years and they share where they're at. And one friend, you know, he's now a director, earning lots of money. And then he says to his friend, he goes, "Oh, I'm still in the stock room." And the friend's shocked because they both started in the stock room. So I'm still in the stock room. And he goes, "Man, what's happened there?" And he says, "Well, I traded it in. I stayed in the stock room so I can have more time for my family, more time for my children." And then you see the two daughters come. One's really loving and, "Thank you, Dad, for all the time you spend and taking me out." And he only had enough money to buy like a little ticket to the cinema, whereas the other dad had tickets to go to, I think it was Disneyland in France. But then he gets a phone call. His daughter comes, gets a phone call, and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, darling, you have to go to Disneyland yourself because I've got an important meeting to go to." And kind of like the moral is the rich and wealthy friend, had no time for the daughter, and then the one that wasn't so rich and wealthy had all the time in the world for his daughter. But anyway, that's kind of like just something to consider in the background. But everyone should invest in themselves. Everyone should think about, you know, developing the skills and stretching the mind. And
Manjit,
yeah,
I know you're wrapping up. Just the last point from me, up on this. On this idea of investing yourself. There was a book I read a couple of years back by an author. I wouldn't recommend looking at his material because yeah, dicey. But anyway, this book was called 12 Rules for Life, and one of the points was, you know, pursuing that which is meaningful and not that which is expedient. And essentially he talks about, you know, just what you're saying, investing in yourself for something that will bring meaning to your life in the future, and not necessarily the impulse to get something which is expedient, in essence, something that will bring you instant gratification and not really provide meaning to you in the long run.
yeah,
So aside from, you know, the buying an ice cream and not those small things, but, you know, just investing in yourself for the future.
yeah, and don't be afraid of that. And you know, and don't feel it's bad, you know, if you want to, you know, go for promotion, or don't feel it's bad that you want to, you know, develop skills to go up the ladder. All right, in and of itself, it's not wrong to go up the ladder, but I just want to stress: be content at each stage in your life. Yeah, you know, because otherwise you can be driven in a direction where you can have all the money in the world, but you're not going to have that happiness. So
Sorry, other Manjit.
yeah,
A quick one, just on investing yourself, just a practical one. There's a website, I don't know if some of us might know it, but they might not know it. A website called Udemy and another called Skillshare. I did some courses on Udemy, and picking up those skills even changed the course of my PhD, changed the kind of jobs I'll be applying for. I think Curtis as well did some courses on there, and they opened up doors for him to be where he is now. So just in terms of investing in yourself, the courses, they're usually about £200 per course, but every couple of days they have a sale where it goes from £200 to like £13. So, you know, if you just look out for those sales and get a course on that sale, and there's many different things. So there's many, even some of those courses helped us, you know, start our business venture. So yeah, those little investments really do help, and especially they're quite cheap, and what you get for them is immense. The skills you can get that can help you with further employment or building something yourself. So I'd definitely suggest Udemy or Skillshare.
Skillshare. There's one I normally go ahead.
Or Coursera.
No, you go, Manjit. You go, Manjit.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's one called Alison.com, and it's free. There's loads of courses in there you can do free. So named after my good friend Alison from Canada, who's with us. So
yeah, I think a couple of people said Coursera as well, where you can Coursera.
Coursera.
Yeah, like spell just like course, like if you do
Coursera.
Yeah, and then just an RA on the end. No. Course. Yeah, remove the S. ERA.
Right, C.
COURSERA.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, and it's normally you have to pay for the certificates, but then you can also you can actually view the material there for free. So they have different things, whether you want to look at marketing, whether you want to look at technical things.
Manjit, there's an A after the.
I was going to say I couldn't get Coursera out of that, but anyway, now it makes sense.
I just wanted to say that this was all great, but do not let it consume your time too much. Investing in yourself in these secular things, because time is short.
Sure. That's why it was just 1 point out of many. Okay, my time is up, and I'd rather surrender my time than be told to get off. So on that point, I'd like to thank you for everyone's contribution. And I think we'll finish this off, and when it's all finished, we'll write a nice little article on this, put it all together. And yeah, and this is how I think cyber school should be, where everyone participates, everyone gets involved, and everyone talks, and not be afraid. And sometimes, we may have bad ideas, but we're family. So if we come up with a bad idea, we share it. We take the rebuke or the beating from it, and then we say, oh yeah, that was good advice, thank you.
Manjit,
Yes.
sorry, can I just make one last point?
Sure.
Just one small point. You may be throwing a spanner in the works. I just want to kind of give a different spin on, the rich.
Right. So hold on. We're back to point at the top of the point. That's it. As long as I know where we are, I'll write my notes.
Yeah, that's a whole presentation for that one. You may want to do one on that one. It's just I know in Christianity, we can, or like probably a conservative mindset, we can have a negative view on the rich. It's based on what we link the rich with, and we have like many examples when Jesus is talking about the rich, like sell all you have for the poor, but I think it's down to a certain type of rich people he's addressing and their motives, with what they do with their money and why they're rich. I think it's down to their motive, but I'm trying to see the rich in a different light. I mean, some rich get rich at the expense of others, but there are many rich people that are rich, but it's down to their motive. What are they doing with their riches? And a lot of them are serving humanity. So like people like me and you, we are being served by the rich. If you just look around you, like literally look around you in your room, in your house, wherever you are, every little thing, what's in your room, what you're sitting on, what you're wearing, what you're looking at, what you're using, the internet, your microphones, your speakers, your ornaments, it all came from an idea, somebody's idea. And, based on, their values, and they converted that value into money, basically by seeing a need, seeing a problem, solving a problem, and then just exchange it, just exchange it for money, basically. So that's their living. And yes, someone got rich off it, but still they're serving humanity. And there's not much, there's more you can do if you do have money. Money, I'm not saying money brings happiness, but you can do a lot more with money compared to like a poor man. Poor people can't really do much to contribute to society because they've got no money. So the most they can do is probably not most, but they consume but not produce. So the rich people are producing, and sadly, a lot of people who are poor, they're consuming because maybe some don't know how to value money or don't understand the value of money or how to use money. So they just consume and consume and consume and stay in debt or stay broke because they're not educated on how to use money or use money wisely. But what I'm saying is there's people who know how to use money, and a lot of them do become rich because they value money. They spend wisely, they spend money on things that probably will hold value rather than spending £500 on some trainers just to look good. But then the value decreases the following week, it just decreases. Basically, it loses value, basically. So there's no return on investments. Like for example, if you spend money on gold, it's going to increase in value over time. So that's a little example, but I do believe, there are a lot of rich people who are helping humanity. They're helping. We're being served right now. If we're using Zoom, we're using our computers, we're using our mobile phones. We are being served, by rich. So there's different sides there's different ways we can view the rich. I think we kind of need a balance in how we look at the rich people. They're not all money hungry, greedy people, but we can desire to become rich, but what's the motive? And my motive is to serve humanity. The more you can serve, the more you can do. Serving is God's will. God, Christ came to serve. That's his desire for us to serve one another. And money can do a lot of things. It can increase the amount of service you can, provide for the world. Anyway, that's a small point, but yeah, we'll continue on the next presentation.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point, Leon. It's difficult, and I'm not saying I haven't been guilty of judging rich people. God knows the heart, and we, I was going to say we know our hearts, but we kind of know ourselves to a certain extent whether, we are selfish or greedy or or just thinking about ourselves and doing things at the expense of other people. So yeah. Let me just read this and then we'll close up. Billy Gates. Yeah, and that's true of Bill Gates. People think he's evil and wants to take over the world, and but whatever his motive is, he has helped a lot of people, and even Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller. We say he was part of the secret society and he was this and that, whatever, but he actually gave a lot of his wealth away for charitable purposes, for Christian missions. He even helped fund schools for Black people, when people were against that. Right. So on that note, then I know Sister Daisy hasn't said anything, but I'm gonna close now. Thank you for your contribution, and we will continue this next time with your consent. Okay, let us close in prayer. And on this specific topic, we just ask for God's guiding hand. And I think to summarize it, Tom made this point at the beginning that you could be earning £10,000 a year, only spend £1,000 and have £9,000 left, whereas you could have someone who earns over 100,000. I think he's used like £120,000 a year, spends £121,000 a year or £119,000 a year, and only has £1,000 a year or less. So it's not really about how much money we earn. It's really what we're doing with the money that we earn, however little or much it is. How we're applying it. Are we doing it sensibly or wisely? Okay, let's pray and then have a good Sabbath. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the Sabbath. Forgive us, Lord, that we don't make the most of our opportunities. Please, Lord, forgive us for the mistakes we've made in the past, any bad advice we may have given to people, the times where we may have wasted the means that you provided, that, Lord, we've not exercised all our powers to give you the glory in everything and all the credit. And Lord, we just thank you for hearing our prayers, that sometimes, even though, Lord, you may not hear our, or we think you don't hear our prayers, but we know that you do. Please, Lord, be with us, guide us, and protect us, Lord, and instruct us in your ways, is our prayer in the name of Jesus.